A big thank you to Bitmap Bureau for sending a physical review copy of Xenocrisis to the channel. Xenocrisis is a new Sega Mega Drive game launched in 2019. The game originally began as a Kickstarter project by Bitmap Bureau. Basically, a few years ago, they joined the Game Jam, in which they created the Mega Drive game in just 48 hours. This was a small proof of concept demo that had about 5 minutes of gameplay, but the ROM itself was compatible with every Sega Gensis emulator I've tried. Now that they've built the necessary experience, they wanted to release a full game for the console, creating a Kickstarter seeking $25,000, but where they surpassed their objective by reaching $93,000, resulting in stretch goals like a PS4, Xbox One, GOG, and Steam ports, and even a Neo Geo version. Now that's impressive. At its heart, Xenocrisis is a twin-stick shooter in the vein of Smash TV, a genre which typically never did too well for the Sega Mega Drive, mostly due to controller limitations. Ask any 16-bit fan out there which port of Smash TV they'd like to play, and most will reply the Super Nintendo version because it's easier to control. But before we get into that, I was a Kickstarter backer for the game, and I asked for the Japanese-style packaging, simply because I prefer how the box art and cartridge look here. I think the art style in the cover completely suits the Japanese characters over it, giving it a perfect B-movie feel. The flip side is that I can't read any of the text here. Now, if for some reason you don't like the standard Japanese Mega Drive cover, well, first of all, man, I don't even know you anymore. But you can also take out the cover and reverse it for the blue spine card thingy. Inside, we find a pretty cool art card, the manual, and the game itself. The manual looks cool with high quality paper and color images, but it's all in Japanese. Whoops. As for the cartridge, it looks perfect. It really looks just like the real thing. The texture, the feel, and the way it doesn't fit my European Mega Drive. Fuck. Thankfully, I contacted Bitmap Bureau and they were kind enough to send me a PAL copy of the game, which I feel is similar to the Japanese cover, but I have to admit I preferred the way the Japanese text fit over the original image. Oh, and you also get a reversible cover for the PAL version as well. Though, once again, I'm not a big fan of the blue spine. At least now, the manual is in English, so there's definitely that. Finally, comparing the cartridges, I can tell Bitmap Studios likely used the same manufacturer as Tanglewood and Tanzer, meaning this is a really high quality shell that in many ways I feel surpasses the original Sega cartridges. Overall, this is a pretty impressive packaging. Booting up the game, you're quickly brought to an introduction cutscene detailing the story. I have to say, I'm not that into the art style used in these cutscenes, but I do love the bold colors chosen, which help bring them to life. As for the plot itself, it's really nothing special. But then again, does the game really need one? But with that said, the cutscenes are all easy to skip, so I'd still rather have them than not have them. You're then brought to the main menu, where you can pick between one of two characters. You'd think they were just different skins, but they've actually got different stats which suit alternate playstyles, though you can also select a different color scheme for each character. Generally speaking, the male character is slower but more powerful, whereas the female soldier causes less damage but is faster and nimbler. I generally tend to prefer the faster characters in these sort of games, so you'll mostly be seeing me playing as her. Anyway, as previously said, Xeno Crisis is a twin-stick shooter, and right off the bat it creates a good impression with some high production values for the system it's on. Not just with the aforementioned cutscenes, which, yes, the art style isn't my thing, but the mere fact they exist is impressive in of itself, but also due to how the game looks. There's a great use of color, smooth animations, and it's not uncommon to see the screen filled with enemies and bullets, with the console never flickering or slowing down. Not to mention the highly impressive giant bosses. There's no doubt about it, this game absolutely looks the part. Where I tend to struggle though are the controls. It's possible that over the years I've been spoiled with the dual analog or keyboard and mouse combos. But man, the Sega Gensis controller is so not made for this. I'm using an official Sega 6-button controller. But regardless of which setup you use, playing this game with a Mega Drive controller is definitely not a smooth experience. Basically, each button on the controller aims at a cardinal direction, and you can press a combination of said buttons to shoot diagonally. The best way I can describe it is, imagine as if there was a second D-pad on the right side of your controller, and that's basically what you get here. To be fair, I'm not blaming the developers for this. It really is a limitation of the controller, and their solution for this is a good one on paper. But despite that, I had quite a bit of trouble adapting. I often found myself shooting in the wrong direction or waiting a few seconds to think which button is the right one before shooting, which in a game like this can be fatal. And that's a shame too, because the gameplay itself is extremely satisfying. It feels so good mowing down hordes of aliens, hearing their sounds as you defeat them by the dozen and empty your ammo clips on them. Each level is semi-randomly generated. What I mean is, the enemy types, room decorations, and challenges will all be the same. But the number of rooms you need to clear, the level design of said rooms, which enemies appear when, and in what numbers they appear, is random with each new playthrough, which helps keep the gameplay fresh. As you mow down enemies, you'll also pick up new weapons and medpacks for your character. I should point out that every weapon has limited ammo, including the one you start with, meaning it's not a good idea to keep shooting left and right without actually aiming. If you run out of ammo, your character will perform a melee attack, which is decently powerful and triggers automatically when in close proximity to an enemy. But I wouldn't really rely on your melee attacks. I found it can be a bit random whenever it chooses to activate, and its refire rate leaves a lot to be desired. I think I would have preferred if there were a button assigned to melee attacks. But then again, not having this as a feature was probably planned to increase the challenge. Luckily, when you start running low on ammo, new ammo pickups will automatically appear, giving you time to replenish your ammo before you completely run out. Additionally, your character also has a roll feature, which when used will make you invulnerable, so you're kind of expected to use and abuse this mechanic. The hard part is that shooting will automatically cancel your roll, so there were a few times where I got myself killed because I started shooting too early, making myself vulnerable in the process. Finally, you also have grenades, which you can throw at any time to dispatch a group of enemies and destroy enemy bullets. They were useful against bosses and stationary foes, but I rarely found myself using them against regular hordes of enemies, as the grenades take too long to explode. Other than health and ammo pickups, you'll also get keycards, which are used to open doors that help you progress through the level, as well as dog tags. The dog tags are then used to permanently upgrade your character, giving you upgrades that range from more hit points, more powerful hits, more grenades, that sort of thing. And each character will have different maximum upgrade levels for each tier. One difference between the Mega Drive version and the modern ports is that the Sega Genesis version hides various important elements like your health, ammo, and number of dog tags in your inventory until the game considers it's a useful time to show them. So, for example, you'll only know how many hit points you have once you've been hit or once you pick up a health kit. The same goes for grenades and ammo. On the modern ports, borders were added that permanently display how many items you have. I'm assuming they did this to maximize the gameplay window for the small Sega Mega Drive resolution. But at times, it can be easy to forget how much you have of what. As you progress through each level, you unlock new cutscenes. And though I won't spoil you the story, there are a total of 3 endings. The worst of which will always unlock if you use a continue when playing the game. But this was something of a controversial decision on the developer's side. Basically, this game is super difficult. And yes, I know, games were extremely difficult back then. But I feel at times the difficulty spikes feel inconsistent. For example, the boss of the first level looks awesome, but is actually harder than the second level boss. It's not so much of an attack pattern problem as it is the fact that he's a damage sponge, made all the worse by the fact that you can't buy any upgrades until you reach level 2, so you'll always fight him at your weakest. If the developers had cut his health by 20%, it would have made it for a much more accessible boss fight, and it wouldn't have felt more difficult than some of the bosses you fight later. Additionally, there are times when you'll die due to questionable hit detection, and you'll also find the occasional graphical glitch. But all of this would have likely been forgiven by gamers if it weren't for the way the bad ending was executed. Basically, when you reach the final boss, this happens.
Game over!
Yeah, that's kind of a slap in the face there. Look, I get it. I get what the devs are trying to do. But I would have preferred if the final boss had escaped, or if you did beat him, but you then get an alternate ending. But having this, yeah, that's not good. Yeah, not gonna lie, finishing this game with just 1 credit is near impossible. You're better off trying your luck on Contra instead. Another small issue I have with the game is that 3 of the first 4 levels look too similar to each other. It's not until you reach level 5 that you get some much needed visual variety. And that's a shame too, because like I said, the graphics are incredibly satisfying. The colors, movement, and pixel art are so damn good. And the same goes for the high energy music. I've seen some people, and even a few close personal friends, who were a bit disappointed by Xeno Crisis. But while I don't think the game is perfect, I for one really enjoyed my time with the game. Overall, Xeno Crisis is a great game that will frustrate and infuriate you. The gameplay is fast and, best of all, satisfying. The graphics are amazing, the sound is amazing, and the gameplay is really addicting. I do think it could stand to be a bit easier or more forgiving. But hey, that's fine, no game is perfect. If you want to buy Xeno Crisis, you can get it digitally on all modern consoles and systems. Or you can order a physical edition on Bitmap Bureau's website. And I for one say, go check it out. Hey everyone, thank you for watching Stika's Retro Corner. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe and share this video. All that fun social media stuff. And if you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon, where you can find all kinds of awesome rewards. Anyway, I hope you have a great day. Bye!